Welcome back. My name is Jim Caseman. We're talking about faith and how to apply our faith in different subjects. Right now, we're talking about Satan and his fallen angels and his rebellion. And we closed in the last session, we described how Satan was defeated legally. And we got to where Jesus was in hell. And after 3 days and 3 nights, then he was resurrected. Death couldn't hold him. He was a sinless sacrifice. But now, upon his resurrection, the power of sin, death, and Satan was broken. So that's when Satan was defeated, right there in hell. And so now that he has been resurrected and the power of sin, death, and Satan is broken, now we can go to Revelation 12, verse 7 through 11. And now we see Michael and his angels. War has broke out in heaven. And now Michael and his angels, they take on Satan and his fallen angels. And how do they overcome? It says, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. So now Jesus is resurrected from the dead. And now their testimony is that Jesus died and took on and paid the death penalty for man's sins. He's been resurrected from the dead, his shed blood. And so their testimony is that he was resurrected by what? The shed blood and the word of their testimony. So in other words, they were speaking exactly how Satan was defeated. And of course, the power of Satan was broken. And now he can be kicked out of heaven. And so then he was kicked out of heaven 50 days after the resurrection of Jesus. Satan and all of the fallen angels and Satan, the accuser of the brethren, kicked out of heaven 50 days after the resurrection of Jesus. Now, he could not be kicked out of heaven until all of these things took place, with God taking on the form of a human being and being the innocent sacrifice, going to hell. And of course, when he originally rebelled, he took about a third of the angels with him. And he still lived in heaven. Now you got to understand that the devil didn't live next door to God. I mean, we're talking about heaven is huge. It embraces the universe. And the universe, right now, I believe it's like a little over 35 billion light years out as far as we can see. And light travels at a speed of 5.88 miles per 5.88 miles per year is how far light can travel. In other words, rounded up to 6 trillion. So light can travel 6 trillion miles a year. And we can see right now with the telescopes out in space, we can see about 35 billion light years out. So that's 6 trillion times 35 billion. That is how huge this universe is. They tell us now, NASA, with the latest telescope out in space, they tell us now, they've revised it, that they feel that God has created over 2 billion, that's B like Bravo, billion galaxies. Our galaxy alone, the Milky Way, is, as far as I remember, it's like 100 light years from one end to the other. That's just our galaxy. And then they say 1 septillion stars have been created. So that's a 1 with 24 zeros behind it. That's how huge the universe is. That's how huge the second heaven is. And so Satan then, when he rebelled against God, and I think the best illustration I can think of, here in this, see, everything we have in this natural realm all started in the spiritual realm. There's nothing new. For example, we have North and South Korea. That's nothing new. Satan rebelled, just like North Korea. They rebelled and took with them, I don't know how many people they've taken with them in starting the North Korea. Well, Satan took about 1/3 of the innumerable angels with him when he rebelled. So in a sense, he created he was his own nation, and he was the prince of that nation of about 1/3 fallen angels. And they took up space, and of course it's huge out there. And so that's where he was. He lived in the heavens until his power was broken, and now legally God could kick him out of heaven legally. And of course, the victory was won in heaven. Satan was defeated in heaven, kicked out of heaven, and now the battle, and now he is living now. He was kicked out of heaven onto this earth. And so the battle has moved from heaven. Now the battle is down here on earth, the battle in the sense that we now enforce the victory on earth that was already won in heaven. Amen. And we do that by faith. All right. So anyway, I felt that it probably was important. We're talking about his rebellion and how legally he was kicked out of heaven. And now he's down here on the earth. And now we have been given the authority over Satan. He's been totally defeated. And now we, the church, have been given authority over the devil here on this earth. And we'll get to that in a little bit more later. All right. Now, the angelic organization is the devil can't create anything. And so he's patterned himself. What he did, he's got 8 major levels among the fallen angels. And so his organization is similar to what we talked about with God. You got thrones, Colossians 1:16. You got dominions, Ephesians 1:21. You got principalities, Romans 8:38, Ephesians 3:10, and Ephesians 6:12. You got authorities, 1 Corinthians 15:24, Ephesians 1:21. And then there's powers. And here again, Romans 8:38, 1 Corinthians 15:24, and Ephesians chapter 1:21, chapter 3, verse 10, chapter 6, verse 12, all in Ephesians. And then sixthly, you got world rulers, Ephesians 6:12, and you got the wicked spirits, Ephesians 6:12, and all the archangels. And of course, that was Daniel 10:13. So he just copied, really what the devil did. He just copied what God had already established. And I mean, like I said, he can't create anything new. All right. Now, so anyway, so now when we're talking about the organization of Satan's kingdom, this is a kingdom of fallen angels who've rebelled against God under Lucifer's leadership and ultimately were kicked out of heaven. And we described in the previous session how that happened. And so they are disembodied spirits that are spiritually dead. They do have some sort of organization that is as organized as a group of lying spirits can be. They try to copy God with how God set everything up, but now you try to set something like that up and counterfeit God, but you're setting it all up with lying spirits. Well, anyway, there's no truth in Satan. He's a liar, and of course everybody underneath him are all liars, all lying and deceiving and seducing spirits. And of course they're spiritually dead. And so then we have, I suppose we need to look up some of these scriptures. I'll get myself back here to 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians, I'm picking it up in chapter 4 of 2 Corinthians. And picking it up in verse 3. But if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing, whose minds the God of this age has blinded, who do not believe lest the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine upon them. Okay, so he's called the God of this age. Well, I see my time has run out again. Well, we'll pick it up in the next session, talk a little bit more about his organization of lying spirits. All right, amen.